Hey guys, if you have debt, you are definitely going to want to watch this video. We are going to cover a lot of rules and important information today that could help you save a lot of money. I want you to know how important this is. I have personally used a lot of the tips and tricks that we're going to cover today, and it has been a lifesaver for me personally because debt collectors count on you not knowing these rules. They don't want you to know your rights. The truth is that some debts are too old to sue on, some balances are wrong, some collectors break the law, a lot of them have bad records, and knowing your rights can help you make a smart and informed choice on what you should pay and how and when. So just stick with me for the next few minutes because we are going to cover a lot of simple steps that can help you protect yourself and your paycheck. So, some of the things we're going to cover today include how to identify debts that you may not need to pay, such as time barred or zombie debts, your key protections under the FDCPA, and how to use them in plain language, and the best practices to verify, negotiate, and pay safely, plus what to do if you are sued. And then also, if you're interested, go check out the pinned comment below this video because we will be sharing a free debt toolkit with you that can help you put a lot of this into action as well. But before we dive into those details, I want you to know if you have medical or credit card debt, our sponsor Care Connect USA can help you out. You can give them a call at the number that you see on screen, and their nonprofit credit counselors can help you figure out what relief you may qualify for. And I have to say, they are experts in their field. I want you to remember as we dive into this that I am not your attorney. I am not a financial advisor. I am not a tax professional. This video is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not legal advice. Debt laws vary by state and situation. It's always important to verify how the rules work in your local area. And you can check out our other videos for more ways to get free legal aid or even free help paying your debts. We had a great video recently where we talked about organizations that can help you pay your debts. So make sure you go check that out as well. Now, the first thing I need you to understand is how debt works in America. It starts when you owe an original creditor, whether that's a bank, a hospital, a credit card, whatever. If you fall behind on your payments to that person, they can either choose to collect on the debt themselves, hire a debt collector, or sell the account to a debt buyer. But no matter what happens, you still have rights here. They may do something that's called a charge off, which is an accounting step after a significant period of non payment. It doesn't erase your debt, it just allows them to assign or sell that debt, and then collection can continue elsewhere. In America, debts can be resold again and again and again for pennies on the dollar, and records can get sloppy and messy very, very quickly. And that can be a real headache. It can open up a lot of opportunities for scammers to take advantage of you. It can create a lot of confusion over what debts you should pay, but it also gives you a lot of opportunity to assert your rights and negotiate those debts, like we'll be talking about here in just a moment. So here is the first step. When you get that call or that letter or something happens, I want you to take a breath and do not pay on the spot, even if you're under immense pressure. Even if they tell you that their offer is going to expire or whatever. Because in a lot of times we've heard people say that, they were pressured to pay this debt and now they're going to lose their home or they can't afford food or they can't afford their medications. So please just remember to take care of your basic needs first. You are allowed to have time. You are allowed to ask for information in writing and review it. And a real debt collector can wait while you verify those details. Whatever you do during that initial contact, do not acknowledge that you owe the debt and do not make a good faith payment until you know your rights. In some states, that can restart the clock on time barred debts. We're going to be talking more about time barred debts here in a minute, but basically, those are debts that are past the statute of limitations. Technically, you may still owe them, but the debt collector didn't take action in time to do anything about it. So they can no longer sue you, and you have other protections from those. But if you promise to pay, or you acknowledge the debt is yours, or you even pay as little as $1, you can accidentally restart the clock on that time barred debt, and then they can come in and sue you for it, and it can create a lot of headaches. So please be very mindful of that while you're on the phone, especially with someone that claims you owe them money. Now, the second step you need to take is to get everything in writing. Don't be shy about it. Tell the caller to send you everything in writing. Refuse to discuss it on the phone. This helps you avoid saying anything that's going to potentially hurt you later, and it also protects you in case the person calling you is dishonest. It's important to keep a log with dates, times, company names, the person you spoke with's name, and what was said. This can help you if you need to dispute it or if you need to report them. Having that evidence can be very, very powerful. This has personally been a lifesaver for me because in the past I've encountered a lot of calls from, first of all, scammers who didn't really hold the debt in the first place, but also debt collectors who broke the rules trying to get me to pay. And having a log of who I spoke to and what they said was instrumental in getting some of my debts settled. And if I remember, I'll elaborate on that in just a minute for you when we get to the more relevant slide here. Step 3 is to figure out who is calling you. Like I said before, there are many different steps to debt collection, and there are many different types of people who try to collect on those debts. You might be talking to the original creditor, which is the company that you first owed, or you might be talking to a debt collector who is working for them, or a debt buyer who purchased that debt from the original creditor. Sometimes scammers can pretend to be any one of those three people, so it's important to always verify who you're speaking with. Now, like I said before, as debts are transferred, sold, and resold, paperwork can get lost. Debt buyers often have poor records, so you can always demand proof that they own the debt and that everything is correct. And that's going to lead us right here into step 4, which is to request a debt validation. This is so powerful, guys. I think I made a video on this a couple of years ago, but there was a period of time where my family was living in a hotel and we were trying to figure out how to get into a rental. And we were facing some barriers because we had pretty poor credit at the time. The first thing I did was request a credit report from all three bureaus. You can do that for free. You do not have to pay for those. Requested it, and then I sent debt validation letters to every company that was reporting a collection on my credit report. Some of them were able to provide that debt validation, but many others were not. And they had to stop collecting and essentially remove that from my credit report because they weren't even able to prove that they had the right to try to make me pay. So I cannot overstate how powerful a debt validation letter can be. So you're always going to want to send these in writing. And they usually say that, you have 30 days after the first written notice to dispute the debt. But the debts that I sent debt validation letters on had been open more than 30 days and it still worked. So I recommend that you try this no matter what stage you're on. But again, I'm not a lawyer or anything like that. I'm just speaking from my personal experience here. Your letter should ask for the amount owed, the name of the original creditor, your last payment or activity date, and proof they own and can collect the debt. Now, if you are dealing with the original creditor, they're probably going to be able to prove that pretty easy. If you're dealing with a debt buyer and maybe that debt has been transferred a lot of times, you can also ask for what is called the chain of assignment. That refers to the sequence of I owed this company and then they sold it to this company and then they sold it to this company, and they have to be able to track it through all of the people who owned it and furnish, the proof that they now own the right to collect on that debt. That can be a very powerful thing to request. Now, during the validation process, they have to stop collecting until they send you proof, which means any obnoxious phone calls or anything like that should cease until they have proven to you that they do have the right to collect on that debt. So when you send this debt validation letter, and I'll drop an example letter in that toolkit that we're going to link in the description below, you should send it in writing by certified mail with return receipt or tracking or something so that you can verify delivery. And you're going to want to keep copies of all of that. Keep a copy of the letter, keep a copy of the tracking, so on and so forth. The more documentation that you can gather, the better your paper trail will be. And that paper trail can seriously help you if you get sued later, or if it becomes a zombie debt that just won't go away and it keeps showing up from different companies and things. Having that paper trail can be very, very beneficial to you. Now, if you go to the link that you see there on screen, you'll be able to get that free sample letter and toolkit that we're talking about. We'll also drop that link down below for you too. Now, the next step that you're going to want to take is to make sure that you're staying off the phone and keeping everything in writing so that you keep building that paper trail. If they continue calling you, you can say, I dispute this debt. Please communicate with me only in writing, which is going to reduce those stressful phone calls. You can also tell them in writing to stop calling you, and then they have to do that. If they keep calling you after you request in writing that they do not call you, you are going to want to document each and every one of those phone calls, because repeated contact after a written request may be a debt law violation that you could potentially report. So, like I said, keeping everything in writing just helps preserve that paper trail. Now, along with that, you're going to want to verify everything they send you. Don't just take it at face value. So compare their documents to your records, look for errors in the balance, fees, or the name of the company. If they cannot prove that you owe them that money, you should not pay it. I know that sounds like common sense, but a lot of people get hung up on this because the company might say something like, oh, well, we can't find that paper, but you still owe us. Says who? Them? Really? You want to make sure that you're only paying on things that you're absolutely legally obligated to pay, because for all you know, some scammer is imitating the collection agency and then you're going to have to pay for it twice, right? Always protect yourself, guys. Like I said before, ask for the chain of assignment. If the debt has been sold and transferred, there's often gaps in that history, and missing links are always a strong reason to dispute the debt, because if they can't prove where it came from, how can they prove it's legitimate, right? You also want to find the date of your last payment or the last activity on your account so that you can compare it to your state's time limit for that type of debt. There is a statute of limitations for all sorts of different types of debt, and it does vary depending on where you live and what type of debt it is. If the time limit has passed, that debt may be considered time barred. And time barred, like I said before, means they can't sue you for it. A lot of the actions that they would take to collect from you, they can no longer do. It means that you are more protected from that debt. Now, if you do something wrong, like make another payment, you can restart that clock and that can end very badly. So please be extremely careful with that. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau said most states or jurisdictions have statutes of limitations between 3 to 6 years for debts, but some may be longer. So if the debt is more than 3 years old, go check that database, right? I think Nolo has one that's really good, but make sure that you're following that very closely, because even a $1 payment or even a promise to pay can restart that clock. And honestly, I feel like that's really unfair, but that's the way the rules are written. So you just kind of have to play along by those rules. Now, the next thing you want to do is review your rights and your records to make sure that your rights have been honored through this process. Like I said before, I am not an attorney, but I have used this particular trick to deal with a lot of debt collectors, and it's been very successful for me. So I'm going to share with you from my experience here. The FDCPA is a law that is called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and it outlines what debt collectors are and are not allowed to do when they're trying to convince you to pay. It protects you from harassment, lies, unfair tactics, all of this stuff. So generally, the rules include things like they're not allowed to call you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. in your time zone. They can't call you repeatedly or harass you. They can't use profanity or threaten you, including threatening to send you to jail. They can't contact you at work if you say not to. They can't share details about your debt with others. They can't pretend to be the police or pretend to be lawyers or pretend to be process servers, right? They can't threaten to garnish your wages or sue you unless they actually intend to do that. They also can't lie about what you owe or artificially inflate that balance with extra fees. If they do any of these things and you keep records of it, that can give you leverage in your negotiations. And that is because the rules say that you can sue them for violating those rights. NOLO says that if a debt collector violates the FDCPA, you can sue them in court, and you may be able to recover damages, including monetary damages, attorney's fees, and more. They also state that the FDCPA allows you to recover up to $1,000 in statutory damages from the debt collector. That is $1,000 per lawsuit, not per violation. So whether they violate it once or multiple times, it's only $1,000, NOLO says. But here's the thing. If They violate that, and then they owe you up to $1,000 and you owe them less than $1,000. That creates some leverage there. And in the past, I have had some success with debt collectors who broke these rules, sometimes repeatedly. And then I pointed out on the phone, hey, you're trying to get $400 from me, but if we go to court on this, you could owe me $1,000 or more because you did this, this, and this on these dates. And this is the evidence I have. Right. And then those debts just kind of quietly went away because they didn't want to play that game with me. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer. This is just from my personal experience, but having those records enabled me to have some success with my debt negotiations. So that may be a tool that is able to assist you as well. Now, if you get to this step and you've done all of this work, you're going to find that you basically have three options, right? You can dispute or refuse to pay if the debt is not yours, not proven, the amount is wrong, it's time barred or whatever. You can negotiate if the debt is valid and you do owe it. This is a great time to enter into negotiations. And as I will show you here in just a moment, most debts can be settled for far less than you actually owe, or at least that they claim that you owe. And then, of course, if you're still unsure of what to do, you can contact legal aid or a nonprofit credit counselor. We have that number for our sponsor that can help you with medical and credit card debt as well. But if you're going to try to negotiate, you should know that many charged off debts can be settled for 20 to 40% of what they say you owe. Older or resold accounts can settle for as low as 10%. But newer accounts, ones that have great documentation or that may be suing you, those are usually going to be settled for somewhere between 40 to 60%, sometimes higher, depending on how big the debt is and how aggressive they want to be in that collection. When you try to negotiate, you should always start lower than you're prepared to pay. Never give them your best offer up front. Raise your amount slowly and only ever pay after you have the agreement in writing. So if you are on the phone with them and you are discussing this, it's a wise idea to start at around 65% of what you're willing to pay. And then if they refuse, you can go up to 85% and then 95% and so on. Never give them your best offer right out the gate, because usually they're going to want to feel like they're winning and they're going to want to increase that number, even if it's just a little bit. So if you start low, that gives you some wiggle room so that you don't break your own budget in this process. If you do have to increase the amount that you're offering, say you start at that 65% of what you're willing to pay and they're pushing you to go higher, you can ask for additional concessions, like removing it from your credit report, right? That's one that we've done a lot. They call it pay for delete when you go in and you negotiate and you pay the debt to have it removed from your credit report. But I tell you, it really does work, because we were able to go from not able to get a rental to buying a home in under 18 months using some of these strategies. Another thing to remember is if you are negotiating the debts, you should never, ever, ever give them your payment information until you have the agreement in writing. And you want to check and make sure that the letter or the email or the documentation that they send you specifies that the account will be marked paid in full or settled in full, so that that remaining balance is released. Otherwise, it's just a payment plan and they can come at you for the remaining balance, and you don't want to get into that kind of a situation. Make sure you ask for a letter that specifies the amount due, the dates, how they're going to report it to credit bureaus, and that it's paid or settled in full, and don't pay until you have that documentation. If they're pushing you to make a payment really quickly over the phone, which I've had that happen to me, then I just say, you're going to need to send me an email. Once I see the email, then we'll be good to go. But until I have something in writing, I can't pay, because that's, puts me in a really dangerous position. And most of the time, if they're a legitimate company, they're going to understand that. The only time I've gotten really big pushback on that is from companies that I don't think ever had any intention of actually honoring that agreement, which is exactly why I insist on that documentation in the first place, right? When you do make that payment, you never want to give them direct access to your bank account, and it's generally a good idea to avoid post-dated checks as well. You can use a money order, a one-time payment from a card. Just be really careful what information that you give them, and make sure that you save any receipts and that settlement letter basically forever, because zombie debt is a really big problem. And that's when you pay something or you get it off your credit and it just keeps coming back over time. Keeping the evidence of payment can be really helpful in helping you keep that at bay. In the instance that maybe you do get sued, which does happen, it's not the end of the world, but it can be scary. Make sure that you open every letter and read every document and respond by any deadlines. This is one of the absolute biggest mistakes that I have seen people make is when they get sued, they get that summons and complaint served on them and they get so scared and they don't know what to do and they can't afford an attorney. So they just don't do anything and they just ignore it. That is the worst thing you can do because then the person suing you can go to the court and ask for what is called a default judgment, which basically says, well, see, they didn't even try to argue with me. Of course they owe me this. Just give it to me. And then the court can give them whatever they're asking for. And then they can go garnish your wages in your bank account. So ignoring a lawsuit does not ever help you. It is always a bad idea. Our sponsor Solo has a really incredible tool that they use that is basically a fill in the blank. It's a survey. You go in, you answer the questions, it populates the answer. You can print it and send it yourself, or you can pay them to submit it for you. I have used that service repeatedly. It has saved me a lot of time and money. I believe the last time I filed an answer with Solo, the entire lawsuit just disappeared. They never answered my answer and they never moved forward, and it just went away. So I strongly recommend using that service. If you don't know what to do in filing an answer and you can't afford an attorney, their DIY tools are phenomenal. But if you are trying to do this on your own, you'll want to make sure that when you respond, you ask for proof of the claim, including chain of assignment, and you push them to prove that you owe. Because a lot of times, I think these debt collectors just file lawsuits and bank on getting that default judgment, and they don't actually have the documentation that they need to win. So, but that doesn't matter if you don't answer. So you have to make sure that you answer. And here's just a few things to remember, right? Most negative items drop off your credit report after about 7 years from the original delinquency, which is different from the time limit to sue. They're related, but they're different systems. Paying a collection does not automatically remove it from your report. You can ask for pay for delete, but you should only ever trust that that's going to happen if you get it in writing. Secured debts, including mortgages and car loans, are different than the unsecured debt, which is mostly what we've been talking about in this video. If you have a secured debt, it means there is some sort of collateral, and you can lose that collateral if you are not paying those debts. So make sure that you get local legal advice to make sure that you're not putting your assets at risk. Most public benefits like Social Security and SSI have protections from most private debt collectors, although there are exceptions for some federal debts, things like child support and stuff like that. So do be aware of that. If your only source of income is protected benefits, you can tell the debt collector that. And honestly, it gives you some leverage because it means that they can't really garnish you even if they sue you, right? So that usually will help them be encouraged to negotiate with you a little more generously and take less than they might otherwise be inclined to. And remember, anyone who threatens you with jail time or demands gift cards or refuses to send you written proof is likely a scammer. So if that happens, just hang up and report that to the proper agencies. If a creditor forgives part of your balance, you may receive a tax form for the forgiven amount. That does happen. Feel free to ask a tax professional or a trusted free tax clinic if it is an especially high number or if you're worried about it, so that they can tell you if this applies to you. Because again, this is not tax advice. I'm not an accountant. Rules can change, so on and so forth. It's always a good idea to consult with local experts to make sure that you understand the implications of that sort of thing. And of course, you can also subscribe to our channel for more ways to save money and get free stuff and more clear, comprehensive guides like this. And of course, if you are struggling with high amounts of medical and credit card debt and you're just not sure what to do, and all of this sounds like too much work and too much headache, our sponsor, Care Connect USA, does have a nonprofit credit counseling line that may be able to assist you. You can call them at the number that you see there on screen. That would be the number in red, not the Medicare number, but the debt collection number over here. They can help you with that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow with more ways that you can save money and get free stuff.